Week 3 is in the books. Week 4 on the horizon. He joins us every week to talk SEC football, and he's going to help us break it all down and make sense of it all. Our good friend Jake Crain of Crain Company, who are crushing, might I add. Jake, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, man. I mean, it goes so fast. Like, we're already in week 4. Like, you're like, hurry up, get here. Then it goes so fast. I mean, but it's been great so far, man. It's only going to get more nuts. These next 4 weeks, there's so many jam-packed big-time games. I mean, not just on October 12th, but I'm just excited to see it. We're going to find out, right, who's fraudulent and who's really about it. It's like, all right, at this point, you got your, to quote American Idol, you got your ticket to Hollywood. Now let's see if you can do it again. So that's kind of where we're at.
And it's to your point you made last week, Jake, about, there were some people maybe kind of griping about the slate.
Yeah.
I mean, those slated games ended up being some of the best we've had all year, right? I mean, with the entertainment value, who knew Georgia was going to play the type of game they did? LSU, South Carolina had everything. We'll start there in Columbia, Jake, as we look back on week 3. LSU finds a way to survive in Columbia, South Carolina. There's been a lot of chatter to this point this week, of course. I mean, we're sitting here midweek, and still I'm seeing petitions floating around and people talking about the referees and disbanding the organization. Thoughts on the game itself, Jake? And, of course, you can talk about the referees. Again, a lot of people out there have said that South Carolina got robbed of that victory and stolen of that. Thoughts on the game and thoughts on how big of a role the referees played in it?
Well, overall, just, the way that both teams played, again, I'm not a fan of either team. I hate it for Shane because, you had him where you wanted him, and everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And at some point, you do got to win these games, and you can't sit here and just make excuses. And the officiating was not good. I don't think the officiating in college football, and we said this after the first 2 weeks, I think it's been horrific so far. And not only just the on-the-field calls, but some of the reviews that are just blatantly obvious. It just makes you ask a lot of questions. But once Lenore Sellers lost that running element, South Carolina was in trouble because they were dictating the terms to LSU. They had all the momentum, all the confidence. You could tell who the more confident team was at that point. And then the play right before halftime, South Carolina loses their quarterback, Nussmeier, on the blindside block, quote unquote, whatever. They kind of got away with one there. It's unfortunate for South Carolina, but LSU did end up winning the game. In South Carolina, you had a chance to make a field goal to win it, right? You despite all of that, I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent, whatever. You had a chance to make the field goal to win the game, and you didn't. With all the momentum and equity that had been built up to this point this year, this was a pivotal moment, and that's what makes it hurt so much, right? Is that this could have been a big turning the tide moment for South Carolina to really infuse confidence, kind of get off the mat and show that, Shane, again, has this program going in the right direction, which I still think he does. But just unfortunate for South Carolina and the way it went down. I think the question you ask yourself after this game is how good is LSU really? Like where do we view LSU in the prism of this? Because if you watch, I mean, Nussmeier, from an anticipation standpoint, if you were watching on TV, you saw it. The guy anticipates as well as anybody in the country, which is shocking when you look at how much he panic throws when there's pressure as well. Like, you get a lot of good, then you get some catastrophe. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground with Nussmeier, and that's really what you want, that middle ground, right? So Caden Durham is a really good back. He needs to be the guy. This LSU offensive line, again, I don't think they were dominant, at least what we thought they were going to be going into the year. But this LSU team still in that tier 2. But for South Carolina, man, yeah, the officiating wasn't great, but you still had a chance to win the game, and you didn't do it. You can't make a habit of just blaming officials for losing games. But at some point, my problem, Chris, and is twofold when it comes to officiating. One is, yes, we know this is not an easy job to do. Nobody said it's an easy job to do. Nobody forced you to do this job. This isn't Iran, right? Like this isn't North Korea. Nobody's forcing you to be a referee, but then they make it sound like it's the hardest job in the world. Like, it's like, no, you want to know what's hard? Being a single mom or being a coal miner. Like, that's a really hard job. Being an underwater welder. Like, we have to expect better from the officials, and then there's no accountability.
Hmm.
Like everybody else is held accountable. The coach is held accountable. The players are held accountable. The fans are held accountable by the way they behave. They can get thrown out of a game, but referees can make all these mistakes, and you don't even get a press conference, right? You don't even get people suspended or fined. There's no accountability. And I think that's what people have the biggest problem with in aggregate, is that it's the one job in the world where you can be awful at it and there's no accountability at all. So spare me it's one of the hardest jobs in the world. No, it's not, right? No, it's not. So at this point, it's like Mike Leach said, maybe we got to start cutting some you-know-whats. Like maybe we got to start finding some people. Like I don't want a letter apologizing from the conference. Oh, sorry, our guys suck at this. There needs to be some accountability, man. You get accountability, I think it'll get better, because it's amazing how much better people do when their ass is on the line. So just spare me they're not going to be able to referee the playoffs this year. Oh, damn. That's tough. Why it's tough? So at this point, there's got to be accountability. But South Carolina, you got to get off the mat, man. If there's one solace to put a bow on it, Chris. If I'm a South Carolina fan, Lenore Sellers isn't a great thrower of the ball right now, but oh boy, it's going to be nice. You can see it. Like you can see he's not all over the place. He has touch. So they got a good one in Lenore Sellers. They got a really good one in Dylan Stewart. It was just a Lemony Snicket style series of unfortunate events for South Carolina fans on Saturday.
Yeah, Jake, to your point, I think with the referees having accountability, that is something that if we could get like something in post game or a presser or just like you said, any kind of accountability, I think it will make people feel better.
Well, how refreshing is it, Chris? How refreshing is it when they bring in like Gene Steratore and they're like, yeah, he missed that one. Like I was watching NFL yesterday. They're bringing guys in like, yeah, that was in the Eagles game. Devontae Smith dropped that ball on the sideline. The Eagles hurried up, ran a play. They brought the booth guy in that, whatever. And he's like, yeah, they missed that one. Like at least somebody's saying it. That's not a commentator, right? It's like somebody associated with them. But there's no financial or logistical accountability for referees. It's the one job where you can just be bad at it. And, it's what it is. Sorry. On to the next week.
Maybe that and Weatherman would be the two.
Yeah, but Weatherman, like, look, I lived in Mobile for a while. That guy had the worst job ever. I just would have came out and said it's a little bit of everything. And it's going to rain, then it's going to be hot as hell, then it's going to rain, and then who knows?
Fair enough. I think to your point, too, though, South Carolina up 17-0. Refs be damned. Got to find a way to win that game at home. At home. Yeah. Let's go to what happened, Jake, in Lexington. I don't know if anybody saw this coming. I mean, just a slugfest. Was a great night to bet the under, which I did. Georgia finds a way to win this game 13-12. They since then have fallen out of the number one spot in the AP poll down to 2. What does that really mean? We can discuss. But are you worried about Georgia after watching this game, or do you look at it as it's the same song and dance? Because we have seen Georgia do this before, Jake.
Yeah, I think two things can be true at once. One, there's some games, regardless of how good the team is, go back to any championship team, that you just got to survive. And it's typically against a lesser opponent, right? Not that Georgia wasn't ready to play this game. I mean, if anybody knows how diabolical Lexington can be to go play there, it's Georgia, because I feel like this happens every time.
And Kirby knows that. Some really tough games for whatever reason.
And again, some games you just got to survive. You look at, that 2019 with Joe Burrow at Auburn. I mean, using Auburn as an example, in Lexington, Cam Newton them had to kick a field goal to beat the Wildcats to win that game and at the end. So some games you just got to survive, and Georgia did that to their credit. But on the other hand, my biggest question for Georgia, a lot of people were talking about the front seven on defense, and they don't have that elite guy this year coming in the season. I wanted to see who are going to be the guys on offense that can make the explosive plays. Because even for a team like Georgia, the odds of you being able to go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 plays on a drive consistently and go score is just not good, right? Last year, we'd see Ladd McConkey make explosive plays, right? We'd see Brock Bowers make explosive plays. You got to have guys that can hit home runs. You're not going to win the World Series hitting a bunch of singles. And when I look at Georgia, whether it's Dominic Lovett, who didn't have, who hadn't been bad, But they don't seem to have the guys that can hit the home runs in some of these games. Like when you play the Bamas and the Texases and the Ole Misses, you got to take advantage and hit some big plays. You need those chunks, right? You need those 50-yard touchdowns, right? Those double moves that get open. The guy that can break a tackle across the middle and go score. And we thought maybe it'd be Dylan Bell, some of these other guys. And right now, if you're a Georgia fan, that would be my biggest worry. I never worry about Kirby and Georgia's team defensively. I just don't. Like I don't worry about Lincoln Riley and his team offensively. It's can you make enough explosive plays, right? Not that you got to live just making explosive plays, but make enough for Georgia to be able to do what Georgia expects to do. And at this point, we haven't seen it. Now, I do think there should be some worry that me and you and my neighbor and God all knew that all Kentucky could do is run the ball. And they really weren't that great at it, yet they still found a way. Now, they only scored 12 points. So let's not act like, Kentucky was just marching up and down the field. But as far as Georgia moving forward, somebody's got to start making some explosives, man. And Carson Beck, again, you could throw the ball deep and that's great and everything, but somebody's got to make a guy miss and go score. Running back's got to make a safety miss and go score. So when I look at this Georgia team, that's my biggest question. In these games that you're going to have to hit big plays to win, who's going to make them number one? And can you make them, right? Because against Clemson, that defense just got worn down, man, at the end. And still, you didn't have a ton of explosive plays from Georgia offensively. The dam broke, and Clemson's defense realized our offense, couldn't score against the blind and deaf right now. So it's, they're human beings. So if I'm a Georgia fan, that's the question I'm asking.
262 total yards of offense for Georgia, just 5 of 13 on third down, and 9 penalties for the Dogs in that game. Very uncharacteristic showing by Georgia. But you know what, Jake? I said this. Georgia slides to number 2 in the AP poll. Texas slides it to 1, and there's nobody who loves that more than Kirby Smart. I mean, he's got to be just giddy to see that. And I feel like Kirby likes these kind of games. I don't know. He was very calm in the post game, and we have one of these. It's like he counts on having one of these games every year.
Yeah. Like
that's a dangerous game, but I mean,
it's almost like getting a golden ticket as a coach to be able to win a close game like this that you can point at and say, see, just like I've told you, you can't use the transitive property in these games. You can't say, oh, well, this team did that against that team, so we don't really have to play our best. And that goes against everything that Nick Saban taught Kirby Smart, that Parcells taught Nick Saban. It's a faceless opponent. It doesn't matter if it's Kentucky or Kentucky Fried Chicken. It doesn't matter if it's Auburn. It doesn't matter if it's Bishop Sycamore. It's about us. It's about the way we play. We will give you schematically the things to win the game. You're going to know what they do. You're going to know who their guys are that we have to take away to make them dribble with their left hand. But this is a game of blocking and tackling and us doing the things we have to do to win, not being penalized, not turning the ball over, right? Respecting each opponent, not for who they are or where they play, but for us, for our sake. And you won. You don't want to be explaining this after a loss, right? You won, and you can use it as a moment to point back when you're playing, somebody before you play Ole Miss that may not be that good compared to you. Hey, remember the last time that we went on the road and played a team that was quote unquote lesser than us and we snuck out of there with our lives? So it's you don't want to have this often, but if you're going to be put in this situation, it's a lot better to win, whether it's by 1 point, whether it's by 100 points, to be able to point back and say, guys, we got to play better, and we all know it.
A lot more fun to teach lessons after a victory than a defeat. That's for sure. Yep. Jake, let's go to a team that got a big-time victory on Saturday. That'd be the Alabama Crimson Tide. Trying to tackle Jalen Milrose like trying to tackle the greased-up deaf guy in Family Guy. It's just nearly impossible. 42-10 the final. I feel like you were pretty confident in Bama. I was pretty confident, but what impressed you most from that beatdown?
Well, I came out here last week, and I was like, I don't think there's anybody in the state of Wisconsin outside of the Packers that can tackle Jalen Milroe or slow him down, and that turned out to be right. I will say, though, early, Van Dyke they were kind of moving the ball a little bit. Like, even him on the play, he got hurt. That was a first down run. I was watching that like, okay, I was harsh on the guy. Maybe they got something cooking, and then he went out, and that other quarterback they brought in, the Mississippi State trade, he couldn't hit a blind kid with a fishing pole, to quote my brother. So that took away, that whatever balance Wisconsin could have had offensively, which does multiple things. But one of the most important outside of being able to score points is it keeps Alabama's offense off the field. And if you notice, it just seemed like Alabama's offense was on the field the whole game, which means Wisconsin's defense was on the field the whole game, having to find a way to tackle Jalen Milroe. And eventually it was bombs over Baghdad deep. And when Alabama's got the deep ball cooking and they're able to run the ball with Jalen Milroe, I mean, that's a death sentence for whoever they're playing against. So Wisconsin, at the end of the day, losing Tyler Van Dyke was a killer. I don't think they'd have won that game even if they would have had him. But that pretty much iced it. This Alabama team played cleaner, right? You had less penalties. You had less turnovers. And sometimes going on the road can do that, right? Because it's just you guys going there. You're going into a hostile environment. It kind of turns up the awareness even more. It sharpens and narrows the focus even more. So Alabama playing clean, I think, was the thing I got out of that the most. I knew they were going to win. It was one of the easiest bets on the board. We were screaming at people to take it when it came out, just like we're screaming at people yesterday to take Clemson before this number goes way up against NC State. So I wasn't shocked by the outcome. I was just, how clean can Bama play? Because again, to get back to the bigger games you're going to play, they got a bye week, then they got Georgia, right? The ones you're going to have to win at Tennessee, you're going to have to play clean to win those games. So it showed progress. I know Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan and Kane Womack and all those guys were a lot happier with the product. It looked like a more organized product. They weren't hurting themselves in big plays. So you got to feel better if you're an Alabama fan and against a quality opponent in Wisconsin. So that's what I would take out of it, not the score and the outcome. It was how clean can we play, and they played pretty clean.
Jake, I'm going to need Blaine to explain to me the whole hitting a blind kid with a fishing pole thing. I need the math on that. The why, what, when, where.
I don't know what he's got against blind kids, but
that's what I'm saying.
I thought it was a pretty apropos, analogy. It was the truth. I mean, that guy, there was a couple throws that he hit over the middle. They sat down in zones a couple times, but outside of that, he had the touch of Dahmer, as we like to say.
The touch of a silverback gorilla, indeed.
Yeah.
The best of the rest from week 3, Jake. Missouri gets a top 25 win against Boston College. Texas A&M essentially seals Billy Napier's fate. Hank Brown shines in his debut for Auburn. Top takeaways from the rest of the slate in week 3.
Man, I think Marcel Reed's got to play. Like, not that he needs to be the starter right away, but that offense, and I know Florida is, struggle bus city. They kind of felt like they had a little quit in them there. Yeah. But Marcel Reed, do you notice the players around him played better? Like when he was in there, that's a real thing.
There are guys that spark a team. Yeah.
His ability, and it's not like he couldn't throw it. I mean, he made some pretty good. It shocked me. Yeah. You thought you were just gonna get kind of, what you're gonna get from Alex Orji at Michigan, a lot of runs, maybe a play action here, try to keep it simple. He was running the offense, and they looked a lot more deadly. They looked faster. They looked more confident. So the question becomes now, you got a guy in Connor Wegman that can play well. You want to see him continue to bounce back from that injury. And I think Mike Elko kind of talked about that a little bit after the Notre Dame game. But I think you got to find a way to put Marcel Reed in there. And it's tough, right? You say you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one, but that doesn't mean you can't have a package in there for the guy. You get down in the red zone, maybe you're struggling to really be able to make the defense have to prepare. You're always trying to steal practice time, right, from somebody, because the more you have to focus on, the less you get to focus on the things we do the best. And that's a real thing that coaches do. So I'm interested to see where they go from here on that. I don't know how you don't give him some playing time, give him a little bit of scratch for Marcel Reed. As far as Auburn and Hank Brown, I wanted to see the decision-making against the New Mexico defense that wasn't very good. I thought he did a good job with that. He made the routine plays routine, which is something that Peyton Thorne wasn't doing, and he didn't panic. Now, having said that, Auburn defensively, it's weird watching an Auburn defense that doesn't run very well, and they don't. And against a Taylon Green-led offense, that's going to be tough because you got to make Taylon Green throw the ball to beat you. And when you look at Auburn just athletically and the angles that they take and instinctually on defense, their ability to tackle, that's very worrisome going into this week. As far as Missouri, look, you beat a quality ball club. I don't care what anybody says. Boston College is a good football team. They had a good plan going in there. The biggest question for BC was, can Castellanos, when he improvises, when he creates, can he not turn it over? Well, early, it was like, oh, here again, he's figured it out, drops the ball, picks it up, throws a touchdown. But then you saw it, right? You kind of saw some of those old tendencies that I'm sure Bill O'Brien sat him down and talked about. But I tell you, man, Missouri, very resilient. Luther Burden, best wide receiver in college football. I don't care what anybody else says. But I really like Noel running the ball as well. Missouri's a good football team. Are they elite? We've got to continue to see how this team grows. But that was a game you just needed to win, and they did against a quality opponent. So, Vanderbilt losing to Georgia State, tough, man. Just tough. Right when you thought, Vandy's kind of like the person that was fat, and then they lose a bunch of weight, and now they're not fat. But every time they look in the mirror, they still think they're fat. Like there's always that thought of, man, God, I'm still fat. Everybody's like, no, you're not fat anymore. Like you look great. Like look at you. Here's a picture. But they just it's like look in the mirror and they're like, God, I'm still fat. No, you're not fat. So I guess Vandy's still fat. I don't know. It's the best way to put it.
They robbed us of a 3-0 versus 3-0 matchup in Como. It's a damn shame.
Like Will Ferrell said in Old School, man. We was robbed.
We was robbed indeed. Hey, let's go to that Week 4 slate, Jake, and I want to start on the loveliest little village on the plains. Where the SEC
you call him little dog?
Tour.
No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, well, hey, listen, I'm taking Mike Gitten's words, a good friend of ours, word for word, bar for bar, if you will. But it's either way, whatever you call it, it's where the SEC Unfiltered Tour and yours truly is going to be. My first ever visit to Auburn, Alabama, to Jordan-Hare Stadium. Going to be getting in town Friday afternoon, staying through Sunday. Cannot wait. Going to get the full experience, Jake. So anybody out there, Auburn folks, you specifically, got any recommendations, send them my way. But this is an intriguing game. I'll tell you this, Jake. We're going to get to the game in Norman in a second, but we picked this game and we're going to this game because I feel like, Jake, when we look back, I think this might be the most intriguing game of the weekend. And I think it could be one of the best games of the weekend. I think we're probably going to see points in this game. I'm starting to drink a little bit of the Hank Brown Kool-Aid, even though I have no idea what I'm getting from him.
There's no alcohol in that, by the way.
I don't know. Maybe not. No, we'll save that for when Peyton Thorne gets inserted. Hopefully not.
Oh, God, that's not alcohol. That's anybody got any that blue magic?
That's gasoline.
Yeah.
Anyways, though, this game at Jordan-Hare, I feel like we know what's on the line, but it's a critical game for both sides. Your thoughts on Auburn, Arkansas Saturday?
Well, one of the reasons it could be the most intriguing, I think there's the most unknowns in this game, right?
Jake,
like we know
it's got the most drunk game potential in my mind.
Yeah, well,
like,
Auburn and Arkansas,
wacky.
The Auburn-Arkansas series is basically the guy from Split. Like 1 minute it's like a 35-year-old British woman, the other it's like a 4-year-old on a tricycle. You never know what you're going to get. I mean, I grew up in the era of every time Auburn played Arkansas at 11 a.m. on Jefferson Pilot, Arkansas just beat us to death. And then whenever Arkansas is favored, Auburn ends up blowing them out. It's just this is the most bipolar series. Trying to predict it's almost, inconsequential because who the hell really knows? But when you look at both these teams, obviously they're in different places right now. Year 2 with Auburn under Hugh Freeze, still trying to get his feet under him, get the roster right. Trying to get the quarterback position solidified, which is the one position you thought, wouldn't be a worry with Hugh Freeze and his track record and quarterbacks. And then if you're Arkansas, it's Sam Pittman's Lifehouse moment. He's hanging by a moment. They need that quality win after blowing the game against Oklahoma State. Say what you want. Yeah, they blew that game. And I think Arkansas fans would agree that they blew that game. The UAB, I think a lot of people are taking a little too much from the UAB game because it's kind of a trap game. UAB's got some quality players as well. I think Trent Dilfer's done a good job with that program. But one of the questions, and I'll start with Arkansas, outside of how is the depth on the Razorbacks front seven, right? Can the offensive line finally put it together under Sam Pittman, which is another weird thing to think considering what his forte and expertise is. It's can Taylon Green in this Bobby Petrino offense throw the ball well enough to be a threat, right? Because if he can, his running ability and Bobby Petrino understanding the importance of the quarterback being able to run and how it can truly get you a hat on a hat could make Arkansas dangerous, right? We've gotten some good and we've gotten some bad. Against Oklahoma State, I thought he threw the ball pretty well, about as well as you could ask him to throw the ball, whether that be on the run or in the pocket. And against UAB, it looked like he reverted kind of back to the old Boise State, can't make the routine throw routine, and it's going to make us one-dimensional, and teams are going to load the box and try and keep you in the box and say, throw us to beat us. So which Taylon Green are we going to see? You look at the Auburn defense, they struggle in man coverage. This 3 down front they're running is not working. You can't rush 3 and then not cover anybody. That's not how that works. I expect to see a lot more 4 down. But athletically, I think Arkansas and Taylon Green can run around this Auburn defense. And if Auburn is not smart, right, because they're not super athletic defensively, they're just not. There's some guys that are, but in aggregate, in total, they're not. They're going to have to find a way. And DJ Durkin's a really good football coach. He's going to have a great plan to keep Taylon Green in the pocket, or when he does move, right, make him cut the ball back. He wants to run around you. That's what he does. When you stop his feet, it lets other guys rally. Make him cut the ball back. Don't let him beat you to the edge and lose contain, because that's when he kills you, because he can just keep going. And these long striders get faster as they go. So that's the thing for Auburn's defense. Now, flipping it on the other side, how good is Arkansas defensively? I think they're all right. I don't think they're great. I think UAB had their way with them a little bit. And then against Oklahoma State, they're able to shut down Ollie Gordon and find ways to put Bowman in bad positions until it was crunch time. And then they found a way to give it back, even though it wasn't all on the defense. For Hank Brown, you got to make good decisions. Again, this game's going to be faster. There's going to be more pressure in your face. The windows are going to be tighter that you're throwing into, so it makes it that much harder. The margin for error is that much smaller, and we don't know yet with Hank Brown. We know he can throw to open guys. He can make good decisions when presented with opportunities, at least against a below-average New Mexico defense. But this goes to the unknown. How much of his legs are going to be a threat going forward in an RPO offense where you need that threat? Not that you have to be the best runner. I'm not asking you to be Usain Bolt, but you can't be Stephen Hawking either. You got to be able to run the ball at least somewhat. So there's a lot of unknowns, man. And I can sit here and try and guess what's going to happen, but nobody really knows, and that's what makes it intriguing. I kind of like the over in this game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm expecting points as well, Jake. And I just look at this one before we move on. You can pose the question. It's important for both sides, but I feel like it's a bigger game, Jake, for Auburn, because I feel like respectfully, Sam Pittman's Arkansas tenure kind of is what it is. Even if they win this game, they may not make bowl eligibility, and he may not be there next year. That Hugh Freeze era is still being built. And I'm not saying that it would just go off the rails, but this would be a tough loss to stomach with what you got upcoming in the schedule. I really feel like
without
Auburn
a doubt
needs this one. And by the way, I'd like to point out, I was labeled a madman for thinking this game could potentially be an upset. Over the offseason, Jake, I think you were one of them. I'm actually picking Auburn in the game, but I would like to point out that all of a sudden this game's a lot more interesting than we thought it was a couple months ago. Just saying.
Yeah. I mean, for both reasons, because Arkansas does, even though the game against Oklahoma State happened, they do look more competent, right? They look better. You can say Arkansas is better than what they have been and the product they put on the field the last couple of years. And then with Auburn, they're a little bit worse, right? I mean, even Hugh Freeze said he thought they'd be a little bit further along as a team, at least to this point. Now there's a lot of the story left to be written, but I would agree with you, Chris, because again, the house that Arkansas is kind of already built, as you mentioned, not a great house, right? It's an okay house. There's been some cool moments in the house, but it's also been some bad. Auburn right now is still building that foundation that the house is going to sit on to find how much you can trust it. And all the momentum that Auburn has accrued in recruiting during the offseason and feel like it's kind of turning right back to where Auburn can put a team out there that reminds you of what Auburn used to look like. So yeah, when you have the opportunity to continue to increase that momentum and turn that spigot back on after it seems like it was kind of shut after the Cal game, you have to take advantage of that moment. So I agree with you. In the processes of where both these programs are, I think this one is more important for Auburn.
Jake, let's go to the national headliner, the site of College Game Day. Norman, Oklahoma. The Oklahoma Sooners really, truly now begin their life in the SEC. Their SEC opener as Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Volunteers come to town. That itself, a storyline in its own. We all know Josh Heupel, what he did there in Norman, winning the national championship, playing quarterback for OU. Thoughts on this ball game? Oklahoma comes off a solid win over Tulane. Heck, they covered that. I didn't think they'd do that. The offense is still questionable. They're getting some guys back from injury this week. Hopefully that can help them. And then here comes Tennessee, who is they're playing like a machine. I mean, we got Josh Heupel onside kicking up 30 in the first quarter. And, I guess he said that was pre-planned. I thought it was hilarious personally. But either way, we know what Tennessee's been doing. Oklahoma looking for some answers offensively. Both these defenses are stout. When you look at this one, thoughts on the ball game on both sides, and what's your feel on this one going in?
Well, I mean, Tennessee, you got to call a spade a spade. I mean, they've been hotter than Hansel at the Male Model Awards. And I get that people say, oh, well, the schedule, hasn't been great, and NC State's not who people thought they were. I get that. I can agree with you. The schedule hasn't been great, but I know what I'm looking at. Like I can watch Tennessee, and my question is, what are, like I said last week, what are they bad at? Like where's Tennessee's weakness at? They really haven't shown one yet. So if you're Brent Venables and you're Oklahoma, and the defense is the strong suit of Oklahoma, I think we can all agree with that. A lot of us thought that was going to be the case. When you have a brand new quarterback and a new offensive line having to work together, it takes time for that to gel. And even when it gels, it's not perfect. I guess you're going to have to the first thing you have to do is stop the run. You're going to have to make Nico beat you through the air, which he's shown the ability to do. And if you're going to funnel resources to stop the run with the wide splits that Tennessee has, the Art Briles splits, as we call them, you got to tackle in space. Oklahoma can do that, right? But then you look on the other side, and I think Tennessee's as good as they've been defensively since I can remember. They're as deep as they've been defensively since I can remember, which is a big worry with the way that Josh Heupel operates at that warp speed pace, was what happens if you go 3 and out 2 or 3 times in a row and you don't have depth on defense. Well, they do now, right? So they can keep the foot on the pedal as long as they want until it breaks you. And I think there's a common misconception about why Josh Heupel and them go fast. They don't just go fast to wear you out defensively. That is a side effect of it, and a very positive one. They go fast because you can't disguise anything on defense. You have to get the call in, and a lot of it's in base. You can't creep guys. You can't hide guys. You don't have time to show one thing and do another. You got to line up in it. So whatever you're doing, the math problem, there's no letters in it, right? Like I'm great at math when there's no letters in it, right? That's what Nico is looking at. It's math without the letters. It's addition, it's subtraction, it's division, it's multiplication. It's not algebra. And it makes it easier and you can play faster. And that doesn't make it simple. They do a lot of things to go that fast, which is not easy to have a bunch on the menu when you're going that fast. And Heupel's kind of perfected it. So if you're Brent Venables, you're going to have to show what you're doing. And when you show what you're doing, they're going to know it. And a lot of it's going to be caught in base, which is exactly what they're going to practice all week. That's what they're going to look at. It's going to look exactly like it did in practice the whole week. So could Oklahoma come out and throw a punch? Yeah. I mean, it's at home. Nico's first true road test. Could you get some false starts, right? Could you rattle them a little bit? Yes. But over 4 quarters, I'm a firm believer in gravity. And when I look at the struggles of this Oklahoma team offensively, the odds of them going out there and playing really clean and putting it to Tennessee as opposed to the other way around, I think is very unlikely. I think the path to victory is a lot more narrow for Oklahoma than it is for Tennessee. And eventually, if Oklahoma is not able to move the ball on offense, as much leadership as Danny Stutzman and them have on defense, that devil starts to get on your shoulder. How are we down 24-3, right? Like I thought this game was close. You look up in the third quarter, it's like now we're going to lose. So I like Tennessee in this game. I like Tennessee to cover. That doesn't mean that Oklahoma is a bad football team or they're not going to do good in the SEC, but they look like a lot of us thought they were going to look. And Oklahoma fans looked at us like we had an elbow growing out of our head, that we didn't think that Texas was getting all this love and Oklahoma was going to struggle somewhat. But that's just where both the programs are right now. And I like Tennessee to win and Tennessee to cover.
Jake, I was right there with you in the same boat. I had OU at 7-5, same concerns, offensive line, quarterback, and love the Oklahoma folks, by the way. They're great. But
they are, man. They fit in. They fit in perfectly.
They fit in perfectly, but it was funny over the summer. You just kind of the lesson I most learned this preseason was that picking Oklahoma football to go 6-6 or 7-5 is seen like a hate crime down there in Norman.
Well, it just lets me know that you guys, y'all deserve to be here. Y'all are as nuts as the rest of us. Come on in the asylum. Like, come on in. Open the gates to Shutter Island. Bring on the Oklahoma fans. Y'all fit right in. Y'all hear voices too.
Were you surprised, Jake, at where this spread opened up?
You talking about 7.5?
Well, I think it was 6.5 on Sunday, and then it
Oh,
jumped.
wow. I thought I saw it at
Well,
7.5.
either way, where you said I kind of thought it would be double digits. I'll be honest.
7.5, no. 6.5 would have surprised me, just because that's a number I think you got to jump on, because we know which way it's going to go. The money's going to pour in on Tennessee, and it should. I think the better question is, where does it end up? Like, are we going to wake up on Saturday morning and it's going to be like 13.5? Like, it's where's this thing going to stop? So, not shocked at 7.5, 6.5 would have surprised me a little bit, but there are some unknowns still with Nico going on the road his first time. But also, when you go that fast, it kind of takes some of the stuff out of it, right? You're not sitting there and waiting and giving guys time to jump. So that's going to be interesting to me. How much easier does going fast make it to play clean? I think that's a real thing.
Yeah, and I feel like Nico's really cool, calm, collected, ready for the moment.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I've got Tennessee by double digits. Let's go to the SECU Bowl, Jake. Florida at Mississippi State. This your noon kickoff. Yeah, you Mississippi State coming off getting blasted by Toledo. We know the situation Florida's in. I know you'll be watching this one, Jake. You're right there with me. You're as sicko as I am.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be watching it. Who doesn't watch when the train crashes?
Thoughts on the greatest pillow fight in the SEC in Week 4? Probably the entire season too.
Well, I have named this game the Patience versus the Patience.
I did see that. Very, very clever.
Not that they're the same thing. One is that Mississippi State fans do have to be patient. I think Levy's the right guy. It was ugly last Saturday. I get it. Not saying that Levy is Saban, but I watched Saban lose to La Monroe, right? So everybody calm down for a second. He's going to get that roster right. I think they're going to be fine. Ford, on the other hand, is the Patience, right? We just talked about the asylum. Patience as in, the one sitting in the waiting room, talking to the wall. It's a matter of when, not if, with Billy. I just wonder if they do lose this game to Mississippi State, do you have to go ahead and pull it then? Like, are you just forced to do it as opposed to this waiting a couple weeks to do it? Because Mississippi State is not a good football team. I think they will be down the road. But this is just one to watch because you love football. And, as sad as it is, you're driving down the interstate and you see that crash, you're going to look at it. So I'm going to look at it.
Why can't we bring back Jefferson Pilot for this one? I mean, this is...
Oh, with Dave, and also Dave.
This
you
feels
remember
like
there's like 8 Daves?
Yeah.
I was like, can y'all hire somebody named John or something for the love of everything?
This feels like Ron Zook versus Sylvester Croom all over again.
Yeah, it's this is not one that there's gonna be a lot of clinic tape off of. Let's just put it that way.
Jake Crain of Crain Company. Jake, one last thing, I'll let you go. From the rest of college football, game or games you're most excited about?
Man, Miami, South Florida, I'm interested in. Just because I think South Florida's got the Cats to run with them a little bit. I want to see how Miami handles this game. Because we know how talented they are. Will that offensive line, because remember, Bama got penalized on a lot of big plays against South Florida that kept South Florida in this game. Is Miami going to be able to hit some of those big plays on the ground? And, Cam Ward obviously extending the play, doing the witchcraft and wizardry that he does. Utah and Oklahoma State, combined age of the quarterbacks is 49. That's incredible if you think about it, with Cam Rising and Alan Bowman. That's got to be the highest ever. Like, it just got to be. Outside of that, man, I mean, they're sneaking. Georgia Tech and Louisville, going to be a good game, man. I'm excited to watch that one. It's a good slate. It is a solid slate. And anybody that complains when college football's on, shut up. Stop. Because you're the first one that's going to be complaining when it's over. And, it takes so long for college football season to get here. But then you want to bitch about week 3. So, no, there's a bunch of good ones all over the place. I'm going to be locked in, going to have the multi-view up. All my animals are going to be nervous watching me watch games. So it's going to be a good time.
How about Nebraska, Illinois with Patrick?
Yeah,
Mahomes,
Friday night.
doppelganger?
Friday night.
Oh, that
really
is
good
Friday.
One.
Yes.
Hey, Nebraska, huge, Chris. Illinois can't stop the run. They can't do it. Nebraska, big. Remember, I told you.
I'll put it in my plays. You helped me out last week, so I'm going to listen to you.
Listen, I love getting people paid, right? I love getting people paid. It brings me a personal blossoming joy.
He's like Robin Hood, the modern
I am.
day.
Except I don't wear tights.
Jake Crain and Crain Jake Crain and Crain Company. Always a pleasure, Jake. We'll do it again next week. You're the man.
All right, Chris. See you, buddy. Enjoy Auburn.